Okay, we'll start with this. Top Rank will have 3 new broadcasters within the next few weeks. The situation we've been monitoring here on the channel as news broke that their deal with ESPN is set to come to an end in the month of July. Where would they go? What would they do? It would seem we now have those answers. Bob Arum hopes that Top Rank will finalize its new broadcast agreement in the coming weeks. The promotional powerhouse's contract with ESPN is to conclude by the end of July, 8 years after the start of a collaboration that at one point was intended to deliver 54 promotions a year. Despite suggestions regarding Top Rank's potential demise, Arum expects the new broadcast picture they enter to have an increased number of dates than exists in their expiring agreement with the influential ESPN. I would call that a win. If the new situation allows you to put on even more fights than you were putting on before, that's a win, folks. Spread across 3 platforms. It's a win for Top Rank in 2025, like it was a win for the PBC in 2018, when they got an extension on Showtime and signed a landmark deal with Fox. Arum is also confident that Top Rank's fights will be broadcast on both free-to-air and streaming services, but played down the prospect of, as had been rumored within boxing circles, Top Rank working hand-in-hand with the PBC, whose promotions have been featured on Amazon and who, like Top Rank, are among the decreasing number of influential promoters not committed to DAZN. Within the next few weeks, Arum told Boxing Scene, when asked when he expects their new agreements to be secured,
"It's a little complicated, because when we were with ESPN, it was one outlet, ESPN, and now there'll be 3 outlets with Top Rank Boxing. More dates than we have now, both streaming and free-to-air. Our contract is over at the end of July."
Asked about a potential model with PBC, he responded, "No, but we've always been open to collaborating with the PBC. It's having their fighters fight our fighters. It's as simple as that." From the perspective of their new broadcast partners, the heavyweight Jared Anderson will likely represent one of Top Rank's most valuable assets, even in a stable in which the IBF lightweight champion Keyshawn Davis and the featherweight Bruce Carrington are among their most promising young fighters. The 25-year-old Anderson's career has stalled since he was so recklessly matched with Martin Bakole and suffered his first career defeat in August of last year. He returned in February when he defeated Greece's little-known Marios Kolias, but asked for their plans regarding the heavyweight, Arum replied,
"Ask Jared Anderson. He has to get over what happened to him with Martin Bakole. I'll be talking to his management in the next few weeks. Hopefully we get him back in action. But at this point, I don't know. We will have a date for him as soon as he's willing to get in the ring and fight."
Preliminary reports seem to indicate that the 3 broadcast partners Top Rank will be moving forward with include ESPN, DAZN, and HBO Max. Those are just rumors and should be treated as such, but because we have confirmation from Bob that they may have upwards of 3 broadcasters moving forward, you can use your own imagination as to who those 3 broadcasters are going to be. Maybe it's not HBO Max. Maybe it's Netflix. They have an interest in staging boxing matches. Maybe it's not DAZN. Maybe it's Peacock. a subsidiary of NBC, that is their streaming platform. At this point, your guess is as good as mine, and all we know is that according to Bob, they're gonna have 3 broadcasters and more dates moving forward, which is a win, because it allows them to compensate their existing stable of fighters and still sign new ones. Signed a new female fighter named Perla that's going to be in action on the undercard of El Vaquero's fight tomorrow. Going to be keeping my eye out for her, but the bottom line is, any situation that involves inking a broadcast deal that gets you more dates is a win, which is the opposite of what happened to the PBC when Showtime left boxing. When Showtime left boxing, they were left with a lot less. So for any Haymanites that thought that Top Rank and Bob Arum, all the good people over there, found themselves in the same situation as Al Heyman's PBC, not quite. And throughout, I was confident that Top Rank, given their years of experience and know-how, would land on their feet. They've been in this business longer than anybody for a reason. And what ill will was wished upon them by many a Haymanite was only done so as a justification for Al Heyman's failures. Recompense. So how many people were giving Al Heyman a hard time for running NBC out of boxing, then Fox, and subsequently Showtime, they wanted to turn the tables on Bob. They thought they had a gotcha moment. Now, as far as the Top Rank brand and their stable of fighters fighting on 3 separate platforms, I'm not sure, but I imagine it might look something like what the PBC did back in 2018, to where they had a cluster of their A-listers fighting on one network and, other guys and B-tier fighters fighting on another. Top Rank still has a very robust stable, and factor in their relationships with other promoters like Zenfer and what fighters they outsource to them. Emmanuel Navarrete, Jaime Munguia, some others. And how does this impact their rights over international fighters' fights here in America? For example, where do you watch a Naoya Inoue fight? A Christian Mabili fight? Things like that. There are still more questions that need answers, but in the coming weeks, at least according to Bob, those answers will come. Men's light heavyweight news. Samson Lukowicz targets excitement for Cinco de Mayo of the coming year. Promoter and manager Samson Lukowicz already has his eyes set on making Cinco de Mayo in 2026 a banner event. Lukowicz hopes it will be headlined by his light heavyweight star David Benavidez against the winner of the trilogy fight between undisputed champion Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev, trilogy, which is expected later this year. It's going to go over a lot of people's heads that Samson Lukowicz was referred to as both a promoter and a manager, which constitutes a violation of the Muhammad Ali Act. While they're harping about Dana White and his TKO boxing and how they mean to repeal the Ali Act, Samson Lukowicz is one of the guys that already found a way around it. Whatever. Lukowicz slammed several of the weekend's drab bouts, which featured Devin Haney, Canelo, and Ryan Garcia, although he was impressed with Rolly Romero's discipline in recording an important win over Ryan. Lukowicz co-promotes Ramon Cardenas, who floored Naoya Inoue before succumbing to the Japanese star's firepower in round 8, along with Paco Damian of Paco Presents and Gary Jonas of ProBox TV. You can't buy good fights, said Lukowicz, who exclusively promotes. Those 2 events in New York and Saudi Arabia cost in the high tens of millions, and they were nothing compared to Sunday's Top Rank event, which cost a fraction of that amount, but delivered the kind of action we needed to save face for boxing. He hopes Benavidez will feature in next year's showpiece against either Bivol or Beterbiev, and no longer does Team Benavidez have Canelo in their sights following his fight with Skull in Riyadh. So let's address Samson's criticism of Turkey shows, because that's what he was really talking about. He was trying to take a shot at that guy. I think it was veteran boxing scribe Marcos Villegas that said it best. Let's be real, folks. On paper, all the fights on Friday seemed like good fights. On paper. No matchmaker or promoter could have expected performances like that from everyone. A famous trainer once told me, at the end of the day, it's up to the fighter to win the fights. Yeah, it's not Turkey's fault. At the end of the day, all he can do is pay the fighters and put the event together, but he can't make them perform. Some bit of it has to come from them. So when each one of those guys lays an egg, that's not on him.
And the location?
Now, the criticism of the location of the Friday fights is valid. I personally felt it should have been at MSG or the Barclays. But I do also know the city of New York has a lot of restrictions in place that made it what it turned out to be. So why is Samson Lukowicz taking a shot at Turkey when it's really the fighters' fault? The card turned out to be bad. It's the pressure. He doesn't like the pressure that Turkey's putting his fighter under to come box in Saudi against the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol. Thinks there's a power struggle there when he has no power at all. All you really have is an email title. After watching Canelo Alvarez on Saturday night and how he looked, I wouldn't put him in with Benavidez for fear he'd be badly injured, added Lukowicz. David Benavidez will fight in the fall and then be ready for Cinco de Mayo to face either Bivol or Beterbiev, where the torch will finally be passed to him as the new face of boxing. Now, some of this we've addressed already in a previous video. But do you see how he's approaching these potential negotiations? Who told you that Cinco de Mayo is the date for you to fight the winner of that fight? What makes you think you can dictate terms to the undisputed light heavyweight champion? Where to fight? When to fight? Don't you see that that's a presupposition? You're taking it upon yourself to designate the date and the location. That's not up to you. Simple equation. Can you provide more money for the winner of that fight in Vegas than Turkey El Sheikh can provide them in Saudi or another place of his choosing? Bottom line, who gets the fighters more money? Turkey or the PBC? You know the answer. We all do, Simpson included. And the other caveat, you aspire to usurp the Cinco de Mayo weekend from Canelo Alvarez when he traditionally fights by trying to stage a fight that same day when all that's going to result in is his event cannibalizing yours, because neither your fighter or the fighter he'd be fighting is more popular than Canelo Alvarez. It's counterintuitive. And it's for that reason that I don't think he's serious. See, the slack-jawed gawkers, the YouTubers, and the podcasters, they eat this stuff up, but in reality, why would you want to go head-to-head with Canelo Alvarez? If there were two pay-per-views that same day, or that same weekend, they're spaced too close together, and you know which pay-per-view most people are gonna buy. Whether you like it or not, it's Canelo's. So why would you want to fight the same weekend as him? You wouldn't. It's bullshit. I don't see a way to move Canelo off of that date. Even if he loses in September to Terence Crawford, say he does, they may stage a rematch. Guess when? Cinco de Mayo, baby! If he wins in September, he'll come back on Cinco de Mayo. And if he loses, I still think he fights on that date. To where you can't move him off. What the hell are you talking about? Do you remember that soundbite where Samson Lukowicz claimed that David Benavidez had taken over Las Vegas from Canelo? Meanwhile, Canelo's about to have one of the biggest fights of the year, if not the biggest fight of the year. Guess where?
Las Vegas.
In September, when and where he normally fights. So at this point, I think Samson's just talking because he's got a mouth. Just saying anything. Just saying whatever so that the journalists have something to write about as a means to keep David's name out there in between fights while he claims that David could be coming back in the fall.
Against who?
Not Callum Smith or Anthony Yard. They're rumored to be facing each other towards the end of the summer, at or around August. And if they're fighting each other in August, well, they're not fighting David in the fall. Like everything else Samson Lukowicz tells the journos, you can't read too much into it. Guy's just talking because he's got a mouth. I look at the lay of the land, the landscape at 175, and I tell myself I'd be surprised if David fights in the fall. And if he does fight, well, it ain't going to be against the big name. Not at light heavy. At heavy, Daniel Dubois is unfazed by Alexander Usyk's mind games. Heading into the rematch, Usyk presented Dubois with pamphlets at the launch press conference that displayed the legal areas which boxers are permitted to land punches on their opponents. The Ukrainian also offered 4 of Dubois' team the opportunity to meet with 4 of his team after the fight for a street brawl at the center of London. Psychological warfare, isn't it? Yeah, that's him. Dubois told select members of the press He's always in that. I think he's a boring guy. He'll just be at home, getting his mind shit. You've got to just beat him in the ring. It's all psychological. When they feel the real pain and the heat, then you can break through that. Power of God on your side, you can do anything. I don't think he can handle the pain or the heat that I'm going to bring. I'm going to just step up and win. That's the whole game plan. Win, points, knockout, anything. Win. Tensions are high heading into the rematch after the recent comments and controversy surrounding the low blow. Dubois uncharacteristically lashed out and pushed Usyk during a head-to-head on the pitch at Wembley Stadium. It's one of them things. If you get angry or something, it just happens in boxing. Dubois said of the push. Yeah, it just happens. I want to put my hands on him properly on the 19th and then show everyone.
There's been a lot of talk about Daniel's run of form and how he seems a different fighter, perhaps more confident than he was going into the Usyk fight before, but what effect does being more confident have on how he fights?
Because it's not to say that being more confident doesn't have a palpable effect. It does. That doesn't necessarily make it good.
Teofimo was overly confident with George Kambosos, and look what happened.
And now you may be telling yourself that, well, that's not a good parallel because Teofimo hadn't fought George before, whereas Daniel, he's fought Usyk before, seen him before.
Okay, so here's another parallel. Deontay Wilder was overly confident that he would beat Fury in the rematch. And look what happened to him.
And he'd fought Fury before. He'd seen Fury before. See, rematches are often won by the fighter who can change, the fighter who can adapt, the fighter who can take whatever they learned from the first fight and apply it to the second. To me, that still seems to be Usyk more than Daniel, because what's Daniel gonna do differently? What, go for the knockout? That's what you did the first time.
Daniel plans to keep a cool head when the pair meet in the ring in July. It's always going to be a tense fight, he said. It's not just plain old hatred, it's gotta be smart, gotta be intelligent, but it's tension. I don't overdo it. It's just, yeah, we're fighting to put the past right. Clear up the controversy.
And so I think about the fighter that Daniel has been in tandem with the fighter that Daniel is, that he's a lot more confident now and becoming a man, and what effect that might have on his methodology. Daniel was never a thinker. He was always a bruiser.
So what does a bruiser do when he's confident?
You talk about mental warfare and psychological games. Well, it would seem that Usyk is already in Daniel's head because Daniel's the one that lashed out. Daniel's the one that shoved him.
Now, I'm not trying to convince you that Daniel's going to be a walk in the park or that he's not a threat to Usyk. He still is. He's a big boy.
Of course, but this idea that Daniel is suddenly a dramatically different fighter due to a string of victories over guys that are nothing like Alexander Usyk.
I don't see what's so different about him aside from the chip he has on his shoulder now. But that doesn't change how he fights.
Now, perhaps it will add more intensity to how he fights, but that's not necessarily a good thing, because in looking for a knockout, you might get yourself knocked out. You've already been knocked out by this guy before.
Still a fascinating fight because of the controversy and Daniel's renewed sense of self that he at least feels like a new man. We'll find out if he is when they fight for the second time.
My question to you guys, who do you think wins?